Welcome, people. This is your honoring. You already know. Today, briefly, I'm going to talk about the follow up about the weather service. It's not easy to talk about. If you remember, guys, previously we did talk about climate change, how the AI can contribute to climate change, and then that what is happening in the northern hemisphere is about to happen in the southern hemisphere. That means all the tornadoes that are happening in the US, the flood that were happening in the US, the flood that are happening in Japan, the earthquakes basically that are happening in the northern hemisphere are about to happen in the southern hemisphere. Therefore, we have to be prepared. And then that, because we're so focused into making more money on top of the concrete, on skyscrapers, you see, we tend to forget about the nature. So basically, when I talk about the nature, I don't necessarily talk about only vegetation as like plants. I'm talking about the rain itself, the flooding itself. That is nature, you see, which is the one that's causing the damages to our people, to our nation, to our countries, to our continents, you see. So now it is a trend if you get to realize that the flooding, the natural disasters are beginning to trend. But what is said is that there is no trend when it comes to rescuing, assistance, or solutions. There's no trend. Then I briefly mentioned that mostly the delay is caused by the fact that there is no benefit, or there is not necessarily much money making when it comes to contributing to climate change. So most people, they don't necessarily wish to donate. They don't necessarily wish to donate. Therefore, I think we need to emphasize on that, donating. When it talks about donating, politically, I noticed that in the UK, they are busy with the elections, specifically in Europe, they are busy with the elections. And then there's a trend that most youth, they tend to now vote for the parties that emphasizes the climate change, the global warming, the solutions towards global warming, because they need to see changes. I do support that. I wish that, I know they are watching me, they can hear that. I wish they can vote the majority, the most, for such organizations that are willing to contribute towards resolutions, towards making AI, towards bring about solutions towards climate changes. There are millions of people that are dying because of climate change, and we pretend as if we don't care, we don't mind. So when it comes to Europe, I big up to those organizations that they are recruiting youth for them to vote for them to bring about changes towards the society, to bring about changes towards the global climate changes. I big up for them. Now the sad part when I say it's not easy to talk about this, because recently in SA, which is South Africa, I mentioned that there hasn't been much of a disaster when it comes to climate change. But what is funny now is that we never experienced tornado in South Africa. Never. I believe the whole Africa never experienced a tornado. We only see tornadoes on news broadcasting from USA. But it did happen that we get tornado, and it did destroy most of the people's houses in KZN, which is in Durban. It did destroy those houses. Approximately about 70,000 people who needed help. You see, most people now, they cannot go to school, they cannot go to work, they don't have a place to stay, they don't have houses, you see, they don't have food, they don't have running water, there's no electricity. Basic needs are basically damaged. Now that affects the people who are educating, the youth itself who are attending primary school, because now they don't have a uniform to go to school. They don't have food to go to school. Probably even the schools are destroyed by the flood, by the tornadoes. The next thing, there's another province which is Eastern Cape, a town called East London, another town called Uitenhage, another town called Port Elizabeth that were affected by the flooding, which damages a lot of houses, damages a lot of properties. Along the way, there are people who died. At the same time, there are another floods in the Western Cape, towards Cape Town, Mossel Bay. There are floods around Cape Town. So you see that there's a change, and I mentioned that previously that there are going to be like overflow of ocean towards the inland. You see, so that means that is a very horrific weather to experience. Most people, they don't necessarily like, if they are not affected by that, they don't necessarily care. What is fun is that I had a conversation on TikTok with some of the ladies who was based in Johannesburg. Same thing. The lady, she mentioned that the nation organization of a non-NGO, which is like they are donating, they are helping people, so they're not necessarily making profit. So in order for them to generate profit, they generate profit mostly by donations to provide assistance towards people. What is fine about that is that she mentioned that they did had some beds, mattresses to provide for assistance towards other people, but there are certain departments of the government who took the mattress and delivered as if it's their own mattresses. Now, what is the error there is that you may not be sure whether they did deliver. Let's say they had about 100 mattresses. You are not sure as an NGO that they did deliver those 100 mattresses, or they delivered only 50 of them. Whether they sold those mattresses or they provided them as a donation. You see, which is quite tricky as a division anyway. Now it makes such NGOs more insecure and more reserved towards helping people, towards assisting or working with the government. You see, obviously, if they are not affected by such damages, for them it does not matter to such people. They don't even care. Now, during the conversation, there was a guy who requested to play a game, which is funny because now we're talking about something that is like affecting a lot of people. Basically, it's affecting the whole nation, because there are certain parts that are still going to be experienced, that are still going to experience flooding. So funny enough, here comes the guy who want to play the game. Like, come on, we're talking about important issues and you want to play a game. But anyway, it's another story. So it shows how like our people behave. It shows like how most people, they don't seem to care so much. You see, which is one of the sad parts, to try to convince such people to pay attention to such things. And personally, I believe that the tornadoes, KZN, the flood, Eastern Cape, in the Western Cape, all these parts that are affected by this flood, I believe that could be declared as a disaster, so that the disaster management team could take over. Because some of those houses, they are damaged beyond repair, they are damaged. The only thing is left, some of them, is only foundations, concrete. The house is not there. So how are you going to recover from that? Most of the houses that are affected are the ones that were provided by the government for people who were living in formal settlement. So now, if you were provided a house by the government and the same house is destroyed by flooding, how are you going to now try to recover from that unless the government intervene? Therefore, in order the government to intervene, may declare that as a disaster and then try to rebuild as soon as possible, or at least try to have a plan B, because in the Eastern Cape, they mentioned that there are some of the houses that were affected due to low field, which means they built their houses in a low land where the is easily flooded. So now they want them to move towards higher lands. So those such solution now, imagine now you are moving over 70,000 people from there. That means it has to be happening very quick, as soon as possible, to recover, to move on, to go to work, to go to school. You see, that will be easy for them as soon as possible. But in order for that, the government now has to provide millions of money. Now, I mentioned different provinces. Now, here's the part now. If now only one province is being provided help, what about the other provinces? You see, somebody may say, okay, because maybe this province is mostly dominated by this political party, so therefore that political party will take over the responsibility, because now the rest of the provinces, they have different political leadership. Therefore now in Eastern Cape, Western Cape, it is under the DA, so they may say DA should take care of those people. If it's in Eastern Cape, they may say, because of ANC should take care of those people. And then in KZN, they may say, okay, KZN, the majority recently is MK, so MK. So it is a division. That is why it requires not political only, but mostly the government to intervene and then be helpful towards that as soon as possible, so that we can move on. Because what is funny, or what is said, is that we don't necessarily have or haven't generated any solution towards. I like the topic of climate change, weather climate, because you see, it's very sad to see that people are being destroyed because of weather. People are being drowned because of weather. You see, it's very sad that, and there's no much help or little solution towards that. It's more like watching people die and you cannot do anything to help. You're just like standing there and you don't know what to do. They die in front of you. That's very sad. I wish for them to recover. I wish that the organization, they can do as much. Even people can contribute towards helping such affected houses. Remember, that is not only the provinces that are only going to receive, or that doesn't mean the flooding or the tornadoes is going to end there in those provinces. It might affect within the next few months before December. It might affect Gauteng province. You see, it might affect the northern provinces within a few months towards December. It might affect those provinces, and those provinces are the ones who have generate more money, more income for the country. You see, imagine now those provinces become affected by that. So that is why this is not necessarily about the political division. It needs all unity of Africans, unity of South Africans, and the government itself. Next time maybe we'll talk about the collusion, which is very interesting, very funny, but very risky at the same time. To talk about the collusion, I'm not sure whether it's a collusion or it is a collusion, which is the collide, but I can sense that there is tension coming. Maybe next time we'll talk about that. For now, stay tuned, stay safe, never forget to smile.